If you feel financially behind right now, there are real psychological reasons why, and most of them aren't what you'd expect. No matter what you do, it can seem like everyone else has more money, more success, more of everything. If so, you are far from alone. This is one of the most common feelings in a modern financial life. Before we get into it, hit subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this series on money psychology. It doesn't matter how much you actually earn or save, because the feeling of being behind can hit high earners just as hard as anyone else. In this video, we're breaking down 7 psychological reasons behind that feeling, and we'll examine whether any of them actually hold up to scrutiny. By the end, you may realize that most of what's fueling this feeling isn't based on reality at all. 1. The visibility bias. The first reason is something psychologists call the visibility bias. What you see is rarely an accurate picture of what's real. Appearances are the easiest thing in the world to fake, and the hardest thing to verify. Imagine two people earning the exact same income, both with about $600 a month set aside for transportation. The first person leases a brand new luxury vehicle, putting down a large sum up front and committing to a payment that barely covers 3 years of driving. The second person buys a reliable used car outright, pays it off over 5 years, and then owns it free and clear. On the surface, one of them looks far more successful than the other. But financially, they're in nearly identical positions. The only real difference is which one chose to display it. This is the trap of judging a book by its cover, and it applies to almost every visible purchase you'll ever see someone else make. 2. Invisible spending. The second reason is invisible spending, and it might be the most underestimated force behind financial comparison. Some people spend in ways that are highly visible: cars, designer bags, physical appearance, frequent salon visits. Other people spend in ways that are almost entirely invisible: retirement contributions, index funds, experiences that leave no physical trace. The problem is that you can't compare a growing investment account to a designer handbag because only one of them shows up when you scroll past someone on social media. Someone who looks like they're spending less might actually be building significantly more wealth behind the scenes. And someone who looks like they're living a fuller life might simply have different spending preferences, not more money. Without seeing someone's full financial picture, any comparison you make is built on incomplete information. 3. The silent wealth effect. The third reason is what we can call the silent wealth effect. Research and countless anecdotal accounts consistently show that the wealthiest people are often the least visibly wealthy. True financial security tends to be quiet by nature, because people who have it no longer need to prove it to anyone. Meanwhile, what looks loud and flashy online is frequently financed, leased, or borrowed, rather than owned outright. Some research suggests a significant share of high-end purchases are made using credit, particularly among younger buyers trying to project a certain image. This means the most visible displays of wealth are sometimes the least reliable indicators of actual financial standing. If you're measuring yourself against someone's Instagram feed, you may be measuring yourself against debt, not against wealth. 4. Upward social comparison. The fourth reason is a well-documented psychological concept called social comparison theory. Specifically, our tendency toward upward social comparison. Human beings are wired to compare themselves to those who appear better off, and rarely to those who have less. This isn't a personal flaw. It's a deeply ingrained cognitive pattern that shows up across cultures and income levels. Job titles are a perfect example of how this plays out in everyday life. A vice president at one company might carry the exact same responsibilities as a senior manager at another, simply because the two companies structure their titles differently. Startups in particular are known for inflating titles as a low-cost way to keep employees motivated and engaged. Because of this, comparing your title or your friend's title to your own progress is comparing two numbers that don't actually measure the same thing. A more reliable measure is whether you're gaining new skills, moving toward your own goals, and feeling engaged in the work you do. 5. Survivorship bias. The fifth reason is survivorship bias, a concept that shows up constantly in online finance culture. Viral stories of huge financial wins get shared, celebrated, and seen by millions of people. The countless losses that happened alongside those wins almost never get the same visibility. When someone turns a small account into a life-changing sum through a single trade, that story spreads instantly. What doesn't spread nearly as fast are the thousands of people who made similar bets and lost everything in the process. If you only see the rare wins and never see the losses required to produce them statistically, you'll walk away with a badly distorted sense of how common that success actually is. This is why comparing your slow, steady financial progress to a viral story is almost always an unfair comparison. 6. The sacrifice. You don't see. The sixth reason is what we might call the hidden cost of success, closely related to the idea that the grass is always greener. It's easy to look at someone who appears to have made it and assume they simply got lucky or had it easier than you. But rarely do we see what was actually traded to get there. Someone working an extremely demanding, high-paying job might be logging brutal hours, sacrificing time with family, and carrying enormous stress just to maintain that income. Someone who appears to have built wealth quickly may have spent years working in difficult, even dangerous conditions that never make it into the story. When you only see the outcome and not the sacrifice behind it, it becomes easy to feel behind without recognizing that you may not actually want to make the same trade-offs. Recognizing this can help remove some of the sting from comparison, because success rarely comes without a cost you can't always see. 7. Inherited head starts. The seventh and final reason is inherited advantage, one of the most overlooked factors in financial comparison. Family wealth, financial support, or an early inheritance can create the appearance of individual success that isn't solely earned through personal effort. Someone might afford a nicer apartment or more frequent vacations not because of their salary, but because of ongoing support from family that isn't visible from the outside. This doesn't necessarily mean that person hasn't worked hard, but it does mean their starting line was in a very different place than yours. Because you can't see someone's starting point, you can't fairly judge how far they've actually traveled. Generational wealth and family support are simply not something you can benchmark your own progress against. When you add all of this together, a clear pattern starts to emerge. The feeling of being financially behind is almost always built on comparisons to information you don't actually have. You're comparing your full financial picture, debts, savings, spending habits, sacrifices, to someone else's carefully curated highlight reel. Once you recognize that most of what you're comparing yourself to is incomplete, distorted, or simply unknowable, the feeling starts to lose its grip. The most useful thing you can do from here is redirect your focus to what you can actually control: your own habits, your own progress, and your own financial path. You are not behind in some universal race because that race was never based on real information to begin with. You're just living your own financial story, one that no comparison could ever accurately measure. If this video helped you see things differently, subscribe for more breakdowns on the psychology of money.